add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
Data can tell lots of different stories. I think the differentiator is how you tell those stories.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sean Simmerly with the Hiring on All Cylinders HR Tech 2017 Extravaganza. I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Britt Ryan. Britt, hello.
Hello again, Sean.
I know. How many times do we get to introduce ourselves and say hi today? It's like, woo!
Yeah.
This has been quite the run.
I know, and it keeps getting better.
It really does. I'm lucky enough to continue that amazing streak. We are joined today by Jason Corsello. Jason Corsello is the SVP of Strategy and Corporate Development for Cornerstone. You may have heard of them. If you are actually at HR Tech in Vegas, you are probably going to be attending their little soiree this evening at Brooklyn
better.
Bowl. Yeah, right? Yeah. And so we're really excited to have Jason join us. So thanks very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I didn't realize I was going to be part of an extravaganza, but it's great to be here.
I know, right? Sometimes words fail me, so.
It sounds like it's the extravaganza leading up to the extravaganza.
Oh, you never know.
Exactly. Well, I know you've been quite busy walking the floor. You're participating in a panel later today, and would love to kind of hear a little bit about what that panel is going to be talking about. It's kind of around the limitations of data and analytics, but would love to kind of hear how that plays into kind of how technology can improve hiring and how that data and analytics kind of plays into it.
Sure. Yeah, so the panel today is focused on data, right? We all have data. We consume lots of data. We do it in our personal lives. Certainly our companies that we work for and work with consume a lot of data and capture a lot of data. So I think as an industry, we haven't leveraged to the power of data just yet. Certainly with machine learning and all the advancements that we're making there, the opportunity exists. So that's what the panel is really focused on, is what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are the opportunities that we can be using data and analytics in our job every day?
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to steal the thunder of this panel, but we've been hearing people talk about, data and how that really plays into recruiting and also retention and all of these different things. Specifically, what is maybe one area where organizations are falling short of leveraging that data?
I think it's across the board in every kind of domain of HR, whether it's in the recruiting side, whether it's in the learning side. I think us as technology vendors, Intello as well as Cornerstone, have a lot of data access, and for us it's how do you embed intelligence into the applications. So we're leveraging the data. Maybe the data can be used in lots of different ways, right? It could be used in producing reports, it could be used in publishing dashboards, but I think there's an interesting opportunity to infuse data in the applications that we build. So it's giving you recommendations, it's giving you insight, it's basically advising you as a professional what you should be doing, creating more productivity. So I think there's tremendous opportunities across the board. In recruiting specifically, we have a lot of data about our employees, right? Where they came from, how long they've been in the job, when they switch, how they switch, why they switch, what skills they've developed. Why can't we take that and infuse that into the hiring process? So I think there's tremendous opportunities. I think we've just scratched the surface in the technology that we use today and how we can be more effective and more productive.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, Jason, I'm curious. I know Cornerstone, and I'm sure there are lots of people here who do know Cornerstone, but I'm also curious if we can just back up a little bit, because
Sure.
I'd love to know a little bit more about you as a guy who's doing corp dev for a company like Cornerstone, and what does that look like for you? Like, tell us a little bit more about your role, and then more
Sure.
interestingly, having been to a few of these HR techs, like what does the
Just a
evolution
couple.
look like for you?
I mean, it's been fast. So I've been coming to this conference for 13 years in lots of different capacities, right? So I first came 13 years ago as an industry analyst, and so I would sit on the panels with Bill Kudick and pontificate about the latest trends. I transitioned to a consulting role, so I used to come with some of our largest clients to this event and shopping for HR technology. In the last 7 years, I've worked for Cornerstone in a strategy and corp dev role, and so really what that is for Cornerstone, it's many things and it changes every day, but it's figuring out partners that we should be working with that complement or do things that we don't do. It's thinking about acquisitions, so walking around the show floor and seeing what's interesting out there. We also created a few years ago Innovation Fund, as we call it, which is essentially a corporate venture where we invest in companies. And so we've done about a dozen investments, and there's other things that come along. But I've been at Cornerstone now for 7 years. The company is now almost 18 years old, and it's been a crazy ride. And certainly this event, it seems to change every year, and the technology just keeps getting better, faster, and I think we'll continue to see that.
Yeah, so interesting. There really is a big technology play, and it's ever increasing. The conversations that we're having with people around big data and around AI and machine learning, and just really, really interesting as we look through these evolutions. Are there trends that you saw coming? Are there things where you're like, yep, I knew that was going to, kind of evolve or get to that direction?
Yes and no. I remember probably 7 years ago, I went to a company in San Francisco, and the name escapes me, but I remember sitting in this room and there was 25 data scientists. And at the time I'm like, what the hell is a data scientist? Sounds interesting. And now, every company has data scientists. In fact, they're probably the hardest position to hire for in technology and even, non-technology companies. And so, that's certainly been a trend that's been evolving over time. The whole data AI is I think a little bit geeky right now. I think we need to, evolve into understanding the practical uses. At Cornerstone, we're doing a lot in terms of infusing that into our existing products. So we're embedding machine learning in our learning product. We're embedding machine learning to be able to predict future career paths. So there's a lot of interesting opportunity. One of the big themes that I think I've been hearing a lot at this event is around personalization. So how do you personalize HR? How do you personalize that talent management experience? It comes all the way from the recruiting side and creating that intimate one-to-one experience with a candidate, all the way to the learning side, right? I use Netflix, I use Spotify. It's such a great experience. I fire up Spotify and I get these songs that I'm like, wow, how is that so good that it knows what I like?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that with our enterprise applications and learning? And so we've been investing a lot in that area at Cornerstone, embedding recommendations so the system knows what skills I have, what role I'm in, what career path I want, and can give me the training that steers me in the right path instead of just saying, go take this compliance training.
Right.
So there's a ton of innovation that's happening right now. It's really exciting to be in HR technology.
Absolutely. And so technology is a big part of that, right? But so is kind of the strategy that you use to put that technology to work. And our industry really is changing. I mean, if you're talking about the gig economy, if you're talking about any number of these kind of nascent situations, like how exactly can we leverage specific strategies to put these technologies to work in this new kind of undiscovered land?
Yeah, Sean, that's a great question. I'm not sure there's a simple or easy answer to that. I mean, every company that we work with is a bit unique in what they do and how they do it, right? You look at Amazon. I mean, they do very fascinating things. What they do is completely different from a large financial services organization. So I think people have to think a bit more creatively these days around how to really leverage the technology. We used to all celebrate when we would go live, right? The big go live celebration. You bring in the cake, and we should be celebrating go lives every day, right? Excited about new technologies. You guys are constantly innovating your product at Intello. We have constant updates. We have quarterly updates, but even more frequent than that from time to time. So the innovation and products are moving so quickly. I think if clients would just take a step back sometimes and say, how effectively could we be doing things differently, leveraging the technology? I think there's so many things you can do with it. I think we need to bring some level of creativity in terms of how we think and how we consume and deploy technology.
Absolutely.
Are there certain things that you're seeing when you talk about creativity, things that are resonating with people or with a certain audience or with a certain industry? Or are there things that are sort of, across the board regardless of industry, or things that you see that are specifically, more prone in one industry versus another?
I think what I'm seeing is in all industries, there's certain pioneering companies that are doing really innovative things, right? And it doesn't just have to be in technology. We work with companies in transportation, and they're doing very fascinating things specific to their industry, right? Companies like UPS and how they have to hire, how they have to train today is completely different from even 5 and 7 years ago. And so, I think it's important to look at, kind of those pioneering companies across different industries, because they're out there. They're definitely out there. I'm not sure there's one specific criteria, if you will, or thing that can define each one. I think the defining piece of all of them is they know their culture, they embrace their culture, and they infuse that in terms of how they deploy different types of technology.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about personalization, right? It also applies to the companies themselves, the industries themselves.
That's
Everyone
exactly
has their own unique situation and how they use technology, the trends, etc.
Yeah, so personalizations at the corporate level also needs to happen at the individual level.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
So you touched on this briefly, kind of talking about the way you can leverage predictive analytics and machine learning to help figure out with your own employees kind of where they're going to go next, right? How do you think kind of hiring technology will evolve to help people make more informed decisions about their next job, whether that's internally or externally?
I think, we're constantly evolving into, people aren't going to find jobs are going to find people. We've all heard that and said that, for 10 years now. And I think we're finally reaching that point where, jobs are going to, the right jobs are going to find you. And I think that's where a lot of companies have to embrace that they're competing every day, right? You're competing for your talent every day. And in fact, you're probably competing more for your internal talent than your external talent in a lot of cases. So, I think that's the thing, is just constantly getting, smarter. We have data. We have so much data now. It's just powering that data to really drive those types of predictions, whether it's in hiring or other aspects of talent.
And I know that I had read somewhere, I think in an article that you published, it might have been on LinkedIn about, I promise, it's I'm not going to throw a bomb at you. But really kind of, I think that there's this really interesting place that we're in where you do have companies that are evolving and technology and data is moving so quickly. And yet there are a lot of people who are living with legacy situations or have a strong desire to be able to influence the people they need to in an organization with data, and yet they don't have the ability to actually pull that out. What are some of the things, for people who are listening to this, who are starting to think, gosh, I'm at HR Tech, I really need to go back and get the message through that we need to change how we're doing things.
Yeah.
Like, what are the nuggets that are sort of the initial things that they need to really be thinking about?
As a recovering kind of researcher and analyst, I think data can tell lots of different stories. I think the differentiator is how you tell those stories, right? I mean, storytelling is so important in everything that we do, salesmanship and storytelling. And that's somewhat of a lost art in what we do in HR. And so I think certainly having the data is important, but you also have to be able to tell the story around the data, because data can be interpreted in so many different ways. So if I was going to say anything, you'd have to marry the story with the data and being able to tell a fairly compelling story. I think that's certainly important today.
Yep. Yeah.
I kind of want to pivot a little bit, mainly because I noticed that you retweeted something that Cornerstone On Demand is 40% female in representation, which is phenomenal. And Intello's huge on diversity, and obviously it's a pretty big piece of kind of fodder right now in the news. How would you advise other companies to be able to get to that similar kind of success in diversifying their own workforce?
I mean, the simplest and should be the easiest is it should start at the top, right? Yeah. Why we do it at Cornerstone is it's extremely important to our CEO. He talks about it all the time. Diversity is extremely important for us, not just gender, but race and everything else. So I think you have to infuse it at the C level, and you've got to kind of drive that in everything that you do, whether it's how you're building teams or projects that you're working on or what have you. So that to me is mission critical. If you can't get it, sold at the top and embraced at the top and really driven in everything that you do. Our CEO speaks about it at conferences. He's, talking about it constantly at the company. We have development days at Cornerstone, which are across the organization, where we basically reserve a full day for development. And a lot of it is around diversity and lots of different topics. So I think to me, it really starts at the CEO.
I couldn't agree more. But Jason, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful little extravaganza. So thanks so much, and until the next time.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. Thank you.